Welcome to 30 Minutes. Today we'll be discussing advanced robotics. We have immersed ourselves in this topic and we'll give you an overview of the knowledge we have gained and the different types of implications that advanced robotics has for the future, and just to give a general introduction of the topic to you guys. Before we begin, let me introduce you to the team. My name is Amanda Knitting and I am a junior studying finance and business IT management. I am joined today with two other disruption technology and law students, Edward Hazel and Nick Alfon.
Thank you, Amanda. My name is Edward Holzel. I'm currently a finance major and a bio major with a pre-med track going right now, and I'm excited to talk about the implications of advanced robotics on the future of our lives.
All right, and I am Nicholas Alfano. I am a political science and philosophy double major, planning on going to law school. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi Ed, nice to see you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Amanda?
Very well. Okay, so let's jump into robotics. First, we need to establish a good definition of what robotics really is. And I typically think of robotics as a type of technology that involves designing, building, and operating robots. How do you feel about that?
I feel it's a perfect definition for what robotics is.
Good. Okay, so you've been studying advanced robotics in the industry of agriculture and the food service industries. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Of course. So advanced robotics are being used to mimic what humans can do now. So like we have waitresses or someone in the field picking farms for farmers. I mean, it's just the abilities of advanced robotics are limitless for what we can do in those industries.
So what do you think are some of the types of implications that come out of these advanced robotics in the agriculture sector?
So my research that I've been doing this semester has been really exciting for what the potential is for what we can do. So currently in the agriculture sector, we are facing what the United States Department of Agriculture calls a major issue with farmers being too old and not being able to get enough workers and produce enough food for the growing population in the United States. And it's expected that within 10 to 15 years we won't have enough food to provide for all of our citizens adequately. So the implementation of advanced robotics like the Harvester Crew, Xavier, and Terra Sentia are all the robotics that would help with that.
That's really interesting. How do you think that, not having people in the fields actually working and having robots working, what does that really do to employment, and, how do you think people will react to losing their jobs to these robots coming in to replace them?
So the best way I think to describe it is for us to explain what the robots would do. So the Harvester Crew is a big automatic machine that's designed for picking strawberries right now. So the way it works is that it's a giant machine. There'll be as you can see on the screen right now, and it goes through the fields and it picks strawberries at like a really fast rate for a robot, like a strawberry every like 8 seconds, and it can move from plants and identify all the plants using artificial intelligence and big data, processing all the data it sees and picking the strawberries quickly and effectively, and doing the work of 30 workers a day. Another robot, Xavier, is actually a cloud computing robot, so a swarm of robots, I should say. So it works by, there's a cloud and a bunch of little like robots that are like planters. So what you do is the farmer's got a little tablet and he clicks the field he wants, and the robots identify what he wants, which he will tell them, and then they go through the field and they plant the seeds in the way that the farmer wants. So if he's planting like sunflower seeds, they have to be like 3 feet apart. The robots will all working together do it, plant it 6 feet apart, make sure everything's good, very effectively, very efficiently. And the last robot is Terra Sentia, which is a robot that will go through the crop fields and measure the crops and do crop inspections, which I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but to farmers and out in the world, it's really hard to get a gauge of where your plants are and when's the perfect time to harvest the crops. And Terra Sentia goes through the field and monitors the plants so the farmer gets precise timing for harvesting the crops.
Okay, so now let me touch a little bit about the agriculture side, let's go into the food service industry, and maybe can you just talk a little bit about what that's like, your findings?
So before I looked into the robots, I looked into what's going on in the food service sector, and right now they're facing a major issue with turnover. So like you would hire a washer or a busboy, and what they do is they work for you for a month or so, but then after that month or so, they get bored or tired of doing it and they quit and they jump to another job, whether that be another restaurant for more money or just out of the food service industry. So one of the problems that they have to figure out how are they going to solve this, and advanced robotics could be the perfect solution for this. There's the robots that I found. So I'll name the robots briefly. So there's Molly, which is a robot that's actually capable of mimicking chefs' movements and preparing food. There's the Dishcraft dishwasher, which is a robotic dishwasher, so you're addressing the dishwasher turnover issue. And then there's Flippy, which is an automatic burger flipper that is actually being used in Dodger Stadium right now, that replaces fry cooks and replaces a lot of people that would normally quit quickly, like flipping a burger. A lot high turnover there.
How do you think that will affect the culinary industry? People like Gordon Ramsay and even higher chefs than him that have created their lives on being a chef. Like over the years, do you think that if robots can just do the job and be more efficient and eventually produce food at a faster speed, do you think that the art of culinary will have like a different meaning?
Yeah, I think it'll have a different meaning. So what I envisioned with Molly actually, so Gordon Ramsay makes his famous like chicken cutlet or whatever Gordon Ramsay makes, the robot can actually watch what he's doing and analyze all of his movements and hand gestures and chopping the meat or putting the seasoning on it and analyze it all. And then it takes that and puts it in a data storage thing. So let's just say you're hungry at your home one day or in a restaurant and you want Gordon Ramsay chicken cutlet. So you click on that and then it'll make it for you. So it's kind of like programming basically, but Gordon Ramsay's like cooking techniques being used. So maybe there's be a way for him to patent his cooking method or put patent it. So every time someone uses his cooking style, it'll actually like generate him like a royalty, maybe like $1. I don't know what the financial logistics would be, but it'd become more like a coding, I guess, what coders do, compared to rather being an actual chef and just cooking.
Can Molly use its own techniques, or is it only taking the techniques from like a different chef?
So yeah, so basically Molly analyzes what a chef does and mimics it. It is capable of like taking shortcuts if the chef's doing something inefficient, like time-wise. It can go really fast or do a shortcut to get the food prepared faster. But they tend not to do that because it's kind of scary to see how quick Molly can go making the food, and it kind of scares the person at home when Molly starts chopping chicken up really quickly with a knife.
That's a good point, because I've seen a little bit about Molly, and he has like the same arm movements and like features of a human, and that is intimidating for somebody to see, especially because when most people use like a knife per se, if they're going too fast, they have the risk of cutting themselves, unlike the robot.
Yeah.
I think that there is an optimistic side to look on to say that maybe in certain like the traditional jobs when we think of the food industry, like waiters and waitresses, or even with like the farmers going out and picking the fruits and vegetables, there's still ways to implement new jobs in that industry or in those sectors, where whether it's working with the robot or finding something that we haven't even thought of. I think that's something to keep in mind for the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you just said, and that advanced robotics is just going to have such a widespread effect across many industries, and specifically these two industries are going to see rapid development once these robots start being used in widespread by these restaurants and farmers, and solve many of the nation's issues that are arising.
All right, Ed, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you. All right, thank you, Nick and Amanda, for joining me. We're going to be talking about the implications advanced robotics has on the manufacturing industry, and the implications are endless, such as co-robots, Iceman and Wolverine, Tesla, and just so many more other robots. And I'll let you take it from here.
All right, thanks, Ed. So yeah, I think manufacturing, the industry of manufacturing, is one where most people would think that automation is taking place and advanced robotics is getting more involved, and that would actually be very much the case. And it's actually predicted that by 2030, 38% of jobs will be automated, which implies that there's going to be a lot of either unemployment or shifting in careers or opening new job sectors. And specifically in the manufacturing industry, 46% of those jobs will be automated. So it's definitely something to keep in mind of, and really changes the future of work for people, and especially for college students and people still getting educated. It definitely is going to either shift their gears, or should be shifting their gears to looking at different options, so that they don't get out into the workforce and realize that they don't have a job that they had intended on, performing. And Tesla's actually a company that is well known, and we've talked about it already in this episode. And their factories really incorporate advanced robotics. Their two biggest robots there are called Wolverine and Iceman, and their purpose is really to move the structure and basically like the framework of the car around the factory, and it makes it more efficient and safe because you don't have either the parts like all in separate.
And you don't have people moving cars themselves.
Yeah, and it actually makes it also cheaper. Automation definitely is cheaper. I mean, there are different, you have to pay a large fee at first for the robot. So.
And it's very interesting to see how advanced robotics is changing, how countries are playing with them, how companies are playing them, how everyone's using them.
Yeah, not even that. Also, just like human and robot interaction, there's actually cobots that many companies are starting to think about implementing, or already are implementing, and it kind of is beneficial because it lets the human not do the repetitive tasks, and instead let the the robot can do that and the human can work on something else. So those cobots are really being used for the repetitive tasks, for carrying heavy items, for fetching, things of that sort. So, I think instead of always thinking in the pessimistic way of, okay, well, does that just mean a lot of people are going to be losing their jobs? That's not necessarily the case. Maybe it's just like finding new avenues to take, and actually either working with the robots, or even touched upon in our class that we're taking, it's also being, potentially a translator. And that's something for, when you're thinking about a career in the future, to, maybe think about doing something along those lines.
So what kind of world are we looking at post this? So you acknowledge that these manufacturing robots are making us more productive, more efficient, increasing the factors of production, but what about the people? Because you say 38% of jobs are lost, 46% in the manufacturing industry. What about the men and women who are in these jobs? What happens next?
Yeah, I think that's a really big issue to discuss, and I don't necessarily have all the answers to that, but I think it's definitely a shift in mindset to say that, if they are losing these jobs, or, maybe they should think of how they can be in a different sector, or maybe one that hasn't been discovered yet, and instead of thinking that they're just going to be taken over, think of it more as a beneficial thing to say that, we can work with them, or they could help us out in different avenues.
It's very interesting to see how advanced robotics is going to change the manufacturing sector and change everything else in the world as countries fight over who's going to have the most advanced technology, and companies fighting over who's going to get that next dollar bill profit with their innovations. It's very interesting. Thank you for enlightening us on the manufacturing sector's effects of advanced robotics.
You're welcome, Ed.
With the integration of technology into the human body, what constitutes a company's product and what constitutes the body's autonomy of the individual?
Yeah. Such deep questions of integrations of robotics and humanity to the point of physical combination open up to questions of ownership. Sure, prosthetic and endoscopists will be seen similar to their less sophisticated parts of today. Clearly, the property of their users. Certainly, such projects will be protected as legal property of their owners. That's much clearer. But it is the other function and features I'm a bit more worried about.
Is there like a specific example you'd care to explain?
For example, bringing back our prosthetic eye. Let's say you're off for a jog, going through, you stop, you admire your friend Tim's brand new Nike Air Force or whatever. Normal eye, it'd be your own private thing. You're not sitting there, you're not filming it, you're not looking at it. But with a prosthetic eye, possibly the data can be transmitted back to the company, back to data aggregators. They can compile the information, and then suddenly you go back on Twitter sometime later today, and the next thing you know, oh look, there's some Nike Air Forces. So now we have to ask this question of, can we keep the image processors from being connected to the internet, to the aggregators, or will they just continue to be?
Yeah, that's very scary. Let's transition to the military implications of advanced robotics. So what did you find through your research?
Well, essentially, ever since the early to mid 2000s, the military has been integrating more unmanned vehicles. Drones have been common since President Obama stepped up the drone strikes throughout the Middle East and North Africa. And the question we have to ask is, ought the safety of our soldiers be put more in place than the people who are getting possibly at the end of the strike? It's a difficult question because we all know the stories of sons, daughters, fathers, mothers coming home under the flag, but we also know too many horror stories of a drone strike striking not a terrorist base but a wedding, a marketplace. So the integration of these fully autonomous weapons is a scary question, and we need to make sure that we deal with it ethically and keep the rules of war sanctioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but aren't most drones, don't they always have like a human operator that ensures that like the drone's acting in a good manner rather than the drone just going out there and picking where to bomb by itself? Isn't there always like some sort of like human command system to it?
Well, right now there's questions of how does that command system keep liabilities going? Can, for example, a bombing run by a military installation in Qatar be responsible for, say, the bombing of the wrong target in Libya? At this point, there's no room for error because you're still flying a drone several thousand feet in the air, looking at the spot and basically being like, okay, and firing the missiles. Similarly, there's massive threats. For example, say the DMZ of South Korea has been implementing a massive turret system, but do we know if that turret system is calibrated for unarmed civilians, or it would be a flood of refugees coming south, activate the turrets, and suddenly have a bloodbath on the border?
It's very scary to think about how one slight issue with the robot can cause many innocent lives to be killed. And I think we should also touch upon Boston Dynamics. It's a company that's working for the dog-like robots and the human-like robots for the military. How do they play into the advanced robotics field?
Boston Dynamics is very interesting, given that they, unlike most robotics that we see implemented today, which have tracking on their feeds, are essentially just one arm. Boston Dynamics is bringing more of the natural forms to the robotics. So they have anthropomorphic robots, where you can see arms, legs, looks more like humans. They have their essentially dog robots. They're not sentient yet with the integration of AI, but at the moment they're still very simple AIs that essentially are just, well, if you look at the video, used to test their calibration. It's very interesting and quite, how do we put this? Amazing that these robots can now do jumps, balance on things, and then still take a gigantic medicine ball to the side of the head and still be able to stand up like you would expect a person to do that. And with all these different forms of the robots, I'm not sure how the integration of AI will eventually turn them into indistinguishable from humans, like we see in, like, say, Blade Runner, stuff like that.
Terminator.
Well, we're praying that we're not getting Terminators. Just don't hand them the machine guns.
Got it. So, I understand Boston Dynamics is making all these great advancements. Do you see the military using these robots in their field of work, I guess?
At the moment, the most integrated type of robotics are essentially bomb defusing robots, used by our SWAT teams and our military, so you don't have to put a body in front of an IED, essentially, because, explosions.
Yeah.
But as you start seeing the robotics, function more as humans, and when you get eventually AIs that can think like a human, be creative, you'll eventually start seeing them implemented, or at least you'll start seeing proponents of them being implemented more in combat situations. So you don't have to put, say, boots on the ground and lives at risk.
Where you just put a bunch of drones out. Well, not drones, but like robots that just act autonomously in the Middle East, and they'll handle all the peacekeeping.
Or peacekeeping, taking up missions such as the one that killed Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. It was a few days ago. Essentially, try smaller tank-like machines that can now become more maneuverable than, say, our modern Abrams, and things like that. I know there are also some companies, it's a British company, I forget the name of, is implementing these things called the Hornet drones, which are very small surveillance machines that can go, I believe, 150 feet, but they're essentially little surveillance.
Oh, like a bee, kind of, like size of a bee or a hornet?
Yes, like that kind of size, so you can start doing reconnaissance around you. Could possibly cause a problem for example, invasion of privacy, trespassing, if implemented commercially, especially if the one bad egg on the block decides to start flying it into people's houses.
Yeah, that would be bad.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So it seems that all the advanced robotics that we're working on are just going to change the way both the medicine field and the military field are going to look for the future. The last time we left off, we were talking about agriculture and food services, and I know you did extensive research on how advanced robotics was affecting the domestic life and also the manufacturing life. So can you tell me what you learned about it?
Yeah, sure, Ed. So when we think of domestic robots, that's kind of a broad term, but there's lots of different types of domestic robots. Some of them include social robots, some of them include your everyday in your home, such as Roombas, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But to start off, normally when we think of a social robot, we think of the Terminator and the death of humanity and all of that. But in 2016, Hanson Robotics actually came out with their first social robot called Sophia, and she's mixed between artificial intelligence and human intelligence, which basically means that she can be programmed to say certain things, but she can also just go off of a conversation and use her own intelligence to either respond or have facial expressions, try to connect with the humans on that type of level. And in fact, this past year, Hanson Robotics actually came out with a smaller version of Sophia known as Little Sophia, and she has all the same capabilities as the big Sophia, but also is, the purpose of her is to work with small children and, you know, interact with them, teach them different programming, such as like Python or different languages of that sorts. And so that's something like to keep the younger generation involved with this new technology and being able to understand it and be literate in it.
So interesting. So would you say the little Sophia would be the first step of advanced robotics coming into the house, or are there other robotics, advanced robotics that are in our domestic lives right now, domestic homes?
Well, I think as a social robot, little Sophia would be the first step, but there are actually lots of different robots in the house, such as people might not even think of, your Roombas.
Interesting. Roomba, is that advanced?
Yes, Roomba is very advanced, and I think more than people even imagine, because they just think that, oh, I'm out of the house, let me turn on my vacuum, and it'll, whether or not it does a good job or not, it's in, you know, different generations.
Yeah.
But really, Roomba is able to map your entire house. If you think about it, it knows the entire layout because it's programmed to know if there's a chair there, whether to go around it, underneath it. So it really gets the entire layout, which makes it pretty advanced.
Interesting. So Roomba is like, a lot of people are Roomba right now, and most people probably don't understand that Roomba is actually doing all that, because that's kind of crazy that Roomba is mapping out your house and remembering it. I would imagine uploading it to a cloud storage, probably.
Yeah, they do, and as of right now, they have it. They kind of are on their website too. They kind of display it as they are not giving it out to third parties. But the thing is, so like technically they're trying to keep your privacy. But there is no laws or any type of regulations that says that maybe like tomorrow, or you know, sometime in the future they might want to change that and do sell it to other companies or yeah, exactly, and which would be like a violation of the privacy. And the real problem with that is that if there are no laws set in place or any regulation, well, you really don't have a say in what's happening to the data that is being collected by the Roomba, and by that, it's really bad.
Yeah, it's
cut that part.
really bad. But privacy in general is something that is very complex, and we actually have a special guest, Peter, who's going to come on and talk about privacy a little bit in the community and talk about how privacy is affecting us in ways that we don't even imagine.
So Peter,
Peter.
come on in.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Hi.
So what can you tell us about privacy that's going on in the community?
So privacy in the community basically is essentially just, from my research, what I've done, is basically trying to protect your data, such as the Roomba, because that also ranges from your domestic life, and it also affects your privacy ultimately in the community because of many domestic cases. So in Roomba's case, let's say, it could track your map, but eventually Roomba's only the first step. Once the Roomba starts map tracking, other sensors in your house are going to start becoming more integrated, let's say like smart chips that they're saying with the Internet of Things, and eventually dumb sensors are going to make smart decisions in your household. And it's going to be maybe from your Roomba is going to track something and say what's dirty, and then something's going to activate there, and it's all interconnected. But the problem with that is when everything's keeping track of your data, then that means everything that's kept on you is at risk. It could be infringed upon.
It's very interesting. And that's all the time we have to discuss domestic robotics.
Yeah, thanks for being our
Yeah.
guest
Oh,
speaker
thank
from
you for
the
coming on, Peter.
No
privacy
problem.
security
Glad to
group.
be here. Glad to be here anytime.
So what we learned in this episode is that the changes in advanced robotics and innovations is going to change the way several industries are going to be affected, and we just need to maneuver ourselves and prepare ourselves for those changes in the future.
Not only is it just the industries that we took a dive in discussing today, but it is also important to realize that there are ethical implications of these advanced robotics. We touched upon Sophia and Little Sophia, who are social robots, who are citizens of Saudi Arabia. And if there are more of them coming in, you know, we have to think about what the future holds and possible rights and other implications that these robots can have, on top of just how they're going to be infiltrating the different industries that we talked about and the workforce and employment.
Thank you, Ed and Amanda. We have run out of time tonight, so thank you for tuning in. Good night. God bless you. Think different. And this is Nick, Amanda, and Ed signing off.